is CGTN, China Global Television Network. Live from London, this is The World Today.
Hello, I'm Jamie Owen. Welcome to the programme. Our top stories: the extreme heat wave sparking fires and shutting down tourist attractions across Europe is likely to go on for weeks. That's the warning from world meteorologists. Our other headlines: Ukraine's grain terminals in the port of Odessa come under fire again as Russia continues naval exercises in the Black Sea. 165. UK midterm election results give both major political parties food for thought before next year's general election. And cracking down on mass tourism, Amsterdam becomes the latest European city to ban cruise ships. The World Meteorological Organization has warned that the extreme temperatures that have sparked wildfires and closed tourist destinations in Europe could continue for weeks. A record-breaking heat wave has hit the region in its peak tourist season. Wildfires in Greece are burning for a fifth day. Workers have walked out at the Acropolis in Athens to protest against working in the heat. Well, temperatures in Athens are expected to rise 4 degrees from yesterday and reach 45 degrees Celsius. Our correspondent Evangelo Sipsas is there. Evangelo, another heat wave hitting Greece.
Another heat wave indeed, and what it sounds like it's not going to be the last one for this year. As you mentioned, though, this heat wave has caused a lot of disruptions. People that work in the iconic site of the Parthenon, the ancient temple of Athena, they walked out of their work on Thursday, and it's going to last until Sunday. Now, it will remain open until 12 o'clock in the afternoon local time, where it will close, and then it will not open again. That is the idea, and that's what the strike is about. Is because we don't want to. They said that we don't want to be there to suffer any of that, the issues that the heat could cause them. And it's not only them. They're not only talking about them, but they're talking about the tourists and others who want to visit that site as well. So they're saying that we're not going to be there, and at least until the temperatures go down. But it's also of the conditions that they're working on. There's a lot of guards that are around there. They have to stand in the sun for hours, and that, of course, is causing them a lot of issues. So they said, and it's not only actually the Parthenon that is going to be shutting down for a few hours during the day. It's going to be a number of other iconic sites throughout the country. In ancient Olympia is also going to shut down, and the island of Crete, and also the famous White Tower in Thessaloniki will also shut down after the afternoon hours. So, but it's not only though that the workers that are walking off the job. It's also these wildfires that are causing a lot of issues. With these high temperatures, we're experiencing wildfires, the ones that we experienced throughout this week, devastating, burning through houses and a number of vehicles, and a number of course, of pine forests, where they're reporting it every day. And now the meteorologists are warning that it's another high risk of another wildfire. So this heat wave is causing quite a few disruptions here in Greece.
And the heat waves are expected, according to the meteorologists, to persist throughout August.
Well, unfortunately, also the Greek Meteorological Organization is saying that we're going to have a heat wave in 3 different phases. It's the one that we're experiencing right now. There's going to be another one sometime in the beginning of next week, and also by the end of next week, we'll have a similar heat wave that we're going through right now, with temperatures going up to 43, even 44 degrees Celsius in some areas. And they're saying that throughout even the month of August, we might see even more extreme temperatures and more heat waves, unlike we have experienced in the past. But it's not only the Greek meteorologists that are saying, but also the World Meteorological Organization is also saying that. And let's have a listen of what they had to say about this heat wave that we're expecting in August.
Well, we know that global warming, we're on trend and seeing a rise in global temperatures. So that will contribute to heat waves increasing in intensity and frequency. And what also happens is they spread across the seasons in time. We've got quite clear indications that they're already growing out into spring. It's the area which we are seeing the strongest growth in heat waves. So they're going to dominate at least half the year in the near future.
And it's not only the disruption in the ancient sites, like the Parthenon and other sites across the country, but also disruption in tourism. The Foreign Ministry of the United Kingdom has issued a warning for those who want to travel to Greece or other parts of the Mediterranean to avoid July and the beginning of August, as the temperatures will increase. So that is also a disruption in tourism and the local economy, which is heavily relying on tourism.
Evangelo, thank you for that. Our correspondent Evangelo Sipsas in Athens. Well, like the rest of southern Europe, Serbia has also been sweltering through some hot summer weeks. People wanting to cool down are using many of the country's rivers and lakes. But that brings its own problems. Our correspondent Alyosha Milenkovic reports.
Police Captain Marko Mladenovic is a professional diver in the Serbian gendarmerie. His unit has the grim task of searching for the people missing in the Serbian waterways. They had over 40 cases just this year.
The
worst is when you search for missing children. If we don't find them, and that's very rare, we feel tremendous guilt. If we find them drowned, then we bring them to the shore where the devastated family awaits. The stress is enormous.
Most of the people who lost their lives drowned in the unsecured rivers and lakes. But even with lifeguards, swimmers are not always protected, like here at the Ada Ciganlija Lake in Belgrade.
During the high temperatures, we increased the number of lifeguards to 45. This year, we had to intervene 7 times. The majority of those were for the migrants, who also found refuge here.
Not everybody has the time or the means to visit the rivers and lakes. Many have to work and go about their daily chores. The local doctors say hot weather causes more heart-related issues. That's why they have practical advice on how to make a hard job a bit easier.
You need to carry some liquid and something sweet. Your heart needs to have access to sugar, so it won't need to do additional metabolic work to produce it. The best thing to have is lemonade or tea with honey, and also some salted crackers to replace electrolytes lost by sweating. Some healthy snacks like peanuts, hazelnuts or almonds.
In the past couple of days, Serbia had a break in the heat wave that blanketed the country for several weeks. But meteorologists say the hot weather will return with temperatures in the high 30s, which is near 100 degrees Fahrenheit. Alyosha Milenkovic, CGTN, Belgrade.
2 people have been hospitalized after a plane was left on a runway in Las Vegas for 4 hours in extreme heat. An investigation is underway into how the passengers on the Delta Airlines flight were left needing oxygen after the service to Atlanta failed to take off. 3 passengers had to be removed from the plane in their wheelchairs, and others needed medical assistance before the flight was eventually cancelled. Delta has apologized for what US authorities have called a shocking incident. Protesters in India's Manipur state have set fire to the house of a sexual assault suspect in a case that's enraged the country. The man allegedly dragged 2 naked women onto the streets and incited a mob to assault them. The incident was reported by the victims in May during violent ethnic clashes. Ukraine's president has sacked his country's ambassador to the United Kingdom. This comes just days after Vadim Prystaiko publicly criticized Volodymyr Zelensky's response to a row over showing gratitude for British military aid. He said Zelensky's promise to thank the UK Defence Minister every morning was unhealthy sarcasm. Kyiv gave no official reason for the dismissal. Russian missiles have hit the Ukrainian port city of Odessa for a fourth night. The region's governor says grain terminals were hit in the attack, destroying more than 100 tons of agricultural produce and injuring 2 people. These latest strikes came as Russia's Navy carried out a live firing exercise in the Black Sea. Moscow says what it calls a target ship was destroyed as part of that drill. Well, let's talk now to our correspondent Leon Ney-Sergey in Moscow. Leon, what more has Moscow had to say about its naval exercises in the Black Sea?
Well, the Russian Defense Ministry issued a statement Friday morning indicating what the particular details of that exercise. They say a ship hit a vessel, a vessel and destroyed it. And therein also was that the Russian aviation and Navy took part in this particular exercise. An isolation in an isolated area that they believe will be navigated quite keenly. And this was in the northwestern part of the Black Sea, a key area therein where, of course, now with the strikes on Odessa, the port that holds millions and, grain silos in this particular situation is situated. So the Russian military says that now any vessels that will be crossing over to the Ukrainian port could potentially be considered military cargo carriers. Ukraine has also responded with the same stance, indicating that it could consider any vessels crossing over to the Russian side as military targets. Now, the situation quite now puts the two countries more still at a different stance, given the fact that the grain deal, Russia terminated the grain deal just recently, earlier this week. And the extent to this is that it has raised a very huge global concern. Turkey has tried to come in and try and mediate yet again to see that Russia reinstates itself in this deal. But speaking from hearing from the deputy foreign minister in Russia here, he says that it can only happen with particular conditions being met.
And Putin has accused Poland of having what he's described as territorial ambitions in parts of the former Soviet Union.
Well, yes. What President Putin says is that, and in this particular case, it is Belarus and Poland that he is talking about. He has earlier been quoted as saying that any actions on Belarus, any treatment of any aggression on Belarus will be considered as an attack on his own country. Now, of course, we very well know that the Wagner mercenaries have shifted to Belarus and they're currently undergoing training not far away from the Polish border. However, Poland considers this a bit of a concern for them and nonetheless are trying to reinforce their border points with troops. However, Poland still says that they are not having any territorial ambitions, considering the fact that now the crisis seems to have expanded. Now, this may certainly be settled with the Russian President Alexander Lukashenko coming into Russia on Sunday to meet President Vladimir Putin.
Что касается польских лидеров,
as for the Polish leaders, they probably expect to form some kind of coalition under the NATO umbrella and directly intervene in the conflict in Ukraine, in order to then tear off a bigger piece for themselves, to regain, as they believe, their historical territories, today's Western Ukraine. If Polish units enter Lviv or other areas of Ukraine, they will remain there. They will stay forever.
Well, Belarus and Russia have had a long-established union, and definitely there's a bit of some confidence coming in from Vladimir Putin on the issues and relations between the two countries. But still, Poland remains a very key concern for Russia.
Leon, thank you for that. Our correspondent Leon Ney-Sergey in Moscow. You're watching CGTN. Still ahead, UK Prime Minister Rishi Sunak and his Conservative Party get something of a kicking in the country's mid-term by-elections.
There's a new agenda for a new world. accelerating change in almost every part of our lives. It's shifting the norms of how we work, travel, and connect. How we think, interact, and develop. It's a new reality, a new agenda with me, Juliette Mann.
Ever wondered what's the difference between a bear and a bull market? Where are the cash cows? And who are the lame ducks? And what exactly are black swans? Grey rhinos? And unicorn companies? Make sense of it all with Global Business, only on CGTN.
Hello, welcome back. A reminder of our top stories. Meteorologists warn the extreme heat waves sparking fires and shutting down tourist attractions across Europe is likely to go on for weeks. Our other headlines: Ukraine's grain terminals in the port city of Odessa come under fire again as Russia continues its naval exercises in the Black Sea. Britain's ruling Conservative Party has suffered something of a blow after losing 2 parliamentary seats in traditional Tory strongholds. The Labour Party and Liberal Democrats overturned the vote after securing sweeping victories in northern and southwest England. Both parties called the result a cry for change. The Conservative Party did, however, hold on to its seat in Uxbridge, the former Prime Minister Boris Johnson's constituency. Voting in the 3 seats was largely seen as a litmus test for Prime Minister Rishi Sunak's government ahead of next year's general election. Sunak said the results show a future election is free for all, but the Labour Party's winning candidate hailed it as a major sea change.
Westminster's been acting like the next election's a done deal. The Labour Party's been acting like it's a done deal. The people of Uxbridge just told all of them that it's not. Now, no one expected us to win here, but Steve's victory demonstrates that when confronted with the actual reality of the Labour Party, when there's an actual choice on a matter of substance at stake, people vote Conservative.
In this campaign, we have rewritten the rules on where Labour can win. People have opened their doors to us and embraced our positive vision for the future, and thousands of the votes cast yesterday were in Labour's box for the very first time.
Tim Bale is Professor of Politics at Queen Mary University in London. Tim, cut through the spin. How should we interpret these by-election results?
Well, I think, to be honest, you have to see it as a very bad night for the government. Clearly, they managed to save that seat in Uxbridge on a local issue, but where a local issue wasn't really that important in the southwest and in the north, where they are vulnerable to losing seats to the Liberal Democrats and Labour respectively, they did very, very badly indeed. The swings in those seats were truly massive, 29% in Somerton and Froome and 24% in Selby and Ainsty. And if anything like that is produced at the next general election, the Conservatives will be in a huge pile of trouble.
That's a big if, isn't it? I mean, what, if anything, do these results mean for Rishi Sunak and his party come the next general election?
Well, to be honest, I think the results suggest that the polling that we've been seeing over the last few weeks, with Labour nearly 20% ahead in those opinion polls, are probably reflecting reality. That can't be good news for Rishi Sunak and his cabinet. Clearly, there are 12, 16 months to go before an election, but it is normally quite difficult, I think, for a government to pull that kind of deficit around.
After a brief period of celebration, no doubt all the post-mortems and the entrail reading begins on Monday. How do the political parties interpret these results as they set out strategy for the next general election?
Well, I think for the Lib Dems, it gives them some hope that they can win back some of the seats in what used to be honest, their southwestern stronghold. So I expect they will try and build upon that. As for Labour, I think the result in Selby and Anstey is obviously very encouraging, but they will, I think, have to guard against complacency. And in some ways, the Uxbridge by-election helps them do that. As for the Conservatives, I think they will look at the way that they handled this by-election and focusing on the costs of the green transition, and perhaps hope that by emphasising that in the next few months, they might be able to claw back some support from Labour and indeed the Liberal Democrats. I think that would probably be a mistake, however. I think actually the conditions in Uxbridge were very particular to that constituency. And clearly, obviously, if we're interested in the future of the planet, I think the government backing away from that green transition will be a very bad idea.
Tim, good to see you. Thanks very much for your time and your expertise. Tim Bale, Professor of Politics at Queen Mary University in London. It's the final day of campaigning in Spain as people there head to the polls in a vote that could see the country swing to the right after years of left-leaning leadership. No general election in Spain's history has ever taken place at the height of summer. The snap vote was called by Prime Minister Pedro Sanchez after his ruling Socialist Party's poor performance in May's local elections. Well, let's talk to our correspondent, Ken Brown, watching events for us in Madrid. Ken, what are the big issues going to be during this election?
Well, normally around election times, Jamie, you hear the phrase being rolled out that it's the economy, stupid. But that doesn't seem to be the case here. It's much more about personality than policy. And also it's become a bit of a referendum on Pedro Sanchez and his last 4 years of rule. In fact, the economy is doing quite well here. The lowest inflation in Europe, under 2%. Also record low unemployment numbers. Now, the opposition say that those numbers have been manipulated and people are worse off than ever. As the election gets closer, as I mentioned, it's become much more about Pedro Sanchez. The right bloc is trying to portray Sanchez as a failure in government, and they want to end Sanchismo, as they call it. They point to botched laws like only yes is yes consent law that allowed over 100 sexual offenders released early from prison, and various other things that they say are simply unforgivable. Here's more in our report. One final push before Spain's day of reckoning on Sunday. A referendum on current Prime Minister Pedro Sanchez 5 years in power is how many commentators see this general election. Ending Sanchismo is the central message for the centre-right Popular Party leader Alberto Núñez Feijóo, the frontrunner to become the next PM.
Estamos ante las últimas sacudidas.
We are seeing the final desperate tremors of Sanchismo and are now a single step away from change and hope for the future in Spain.
Y de la esperanza para España.
When Feijóo went head-to-head with Sanchez on the 10th of July in the only televised debate between the two, most commentators say the Conservative leader came out on top. But when Spain's national broadcaster invited the top 4 leaders for a final TV debate on Wednesday, Feijóo declined. Sanchez and his coalition partner, Sumar leader Yolanda Díaz, showed a united front on the left.
Mr. Feijóo is ashamed to appear together with his partner, Mr. Abascal. He's not ashamed to use Mr. Abascal's votes. He accepts those, nor is he ashamed of Mr. Abascal's policies, which he also accepts.
Spanish electoral law stopped opinion polling on Monday, with a PP-Vox coalition the most likely outcome according to data at that point. It's a celebratory atmosphere here at the Popular Party's closing rallies. Friday is the final day for political campaigning before the country goes to the ballot boxes on Sunday. The Spanish political pendulum swung to the right in the recent regional elections, where the PP made huge gains. And while the left has made up some ground in the recent days, the political momentum is undoubtedly with the centre-right PP and the far-right party Vox. In the last few days, however, Feijóo made an error on his party's pension record live on national TV and has also been questioned on his relationship with notorious drug trafficker Marcial Dorado. Diaz and Sanchez have gone to great lengths to portray PP and Vox as the same thing. They accuse them of being climate change deniers who will drag the country back 50 years in women's rights and other issues. Whether that strategy can turn the tide remains to be seen. Well, this is an extraordinary election in many ways, held at the height of summer, in between heat waves that have brought temperatures of over 40 degrees. No general election in Spanish history has ever been held this late in summer. Over 2.6 million people have asked to vote by mail. That is the biggest number ever, a 98% increase on the last election in 2019. People still determined to vote here despite these extraordinary circumstances.
Ken, thank you for that. Our correspondent Ken Brown in Madrid. Cruise ships have been banned from Amsterdam city centre as the Dutch capital tries to limit tourist numbers and curb pollution. Politicians say the vessels are not in line with the city's sustainable ambitions. More than 100 cruise ships, usually more at Amsterdam, each year. Well, it's now the second European city to ban cruise ships after Venice made that decision 2 years ago. Our correspondent Paul Barber reports.
Canals, culture and legal cannabis consumption. Amsterdam is one of Europe's most popular tourist destinations. 20 million people visit every year, many arriving in the city centre on more than 100 cruise ships, but not for much longer. The city is banning the vessels, with one local leader likening cruise tourists to a plague of locusts. There are also environmental concerns. A recent study found one cruise ship produces as much pollution in one day as 30,000 trucks. Amsterdam is looking to Venice for inspiration. In 2021, the iconic Italian city banned ships weighing over 25,000 tons from the Venice Lagoon and the Central Canal after one crashed, and long-standing concerns over the impact on the city's crumbling foundations. So-called hit-and-run cruise tourists make up around 70% of visits to Venice, but only contribute to 18% of the economy as they eat and sleep on board. The cruise line industry took a huge hit from the COVID pandemic, the three largest operators losing 70% of their revenue in 2020. But few would now bet against the business, which is seeing a bounce back. The world's largest ever cruise ship, called the Icon of the Seas, commissioned by Royal Caribbean and measuring 365 metres long, is nearing completion in Finland. It's 5 times the size of the Titanic, and tickets have sold out for its debut voyage in January 2024, which will depart from Miami.
After the restrictions have gone and the situation has eased up, we are seeing that the market is coming back very strong. For example, the American market, the North American market is very strong. People want to go on a vacation on a ship for good reasons, because you get a good value for the money when you are going on board.
And China is getting in on the action. The trial voyage of the country's first domestically made cruise ship, the Adora Magic City, has set off from the port of Shanghai. Able to carry 6,500 passengers, it's a key moment for China's maritime industry. The annual cruise tourism market growth has exceeded 4% since 2006 and is expected to grow into the world's largest cruise market by 2030. Paul Barber, CGTN.
And finally, hundreds of endangered seahorses are making themselves at home in Sydney Harbour. Conservationists have installed 8 underwater so-called seahorse hotels made of biodegradable metal. Over the years, the metal breaks down, leaving behind a semi-natural reef. White seahorses are endemic to waters surrounding Australia's east coast. They were classified as endangered back in 2017. It's hoped this initiative will help restore the population. And that is The World Today. Thank you for watching. We're back with more news at the top of this hour. Coming up next, it's World Insight. For now, from all of the team in London, it's goodbye.